During a fierce and intense battle, a man calls upon his holy sword, and with great power, he unleashes it upon the enemies. The bright glow of the sword shines as it strikes, cutting through the chaos of the fight. A young man named Ishua, watching from the sidelines, is filled with awe and amazement at the hero's skill, especially when he sees the sword's power, Excalibur. However, Ishua quickly realizes that using this skill takes up a huge amount of mana. To his surprise, the hero uses it repeatedly, firing it rapidly, which causes Ishua to worry about the hero's mana running out. As the battle rages on, the other members of the group join in, attacking with their own powerful skills, like the Blade of Grams, Lightning Magic, and Holy Nova. Each skill fills the air with bright flashes and intense energy. Ishua understands that with all this power being used, the mage in their group must keep her mana full to continue casting her spells. He quickly makes it his priority to focus on replenishing her mana, ensuring she can keep chanting and supporting the team with her magic. This way, they can continue to fight back with their full strength. Simultaneously, he worked to mend the cursed blade. Lastly, he cast magic to provide healing and stat buffs for the Saintess. With everyone's mana restored to the maximum, he urged the party to leave the mana replenishment to him and fight at full strength. But a few days later, the hero named Alan vanished. Ishua from the party, who was a mana porter, was stunned by this. Still, he hurriedly reminded Alan that the party would soon run out of mana without his support, but Alan dismissed him and claimed that the party never ran out of mana to begin with. Ishua then tried to explain that this was due to his efforts, but Alan called him a liar. However, the truth was actually because Alan couldn't stand the attention Ishua was receiving from the women in the party, despite viewing him as useless. With that, Alan declared that the decision to expel Ishua was unanimous, which left him taken aback. Still, Alan coldly insisted Ishua leave and reminded him that, as a mere mana porter, he had no right to talk back. As he departed, Ishua couldn't help but reflect that being exiled felt unthinkable. After all, in a party where mana flowed like a raging river, the mana porter stood tall and was quietly sustaining the team. However, they were unable to cast spells, so they worked behind the scenes, and it often led them to be dismissed as failures by people like Alan. But the hero's party was composed of a hero, a sage, a saint, and an arcane sword master that relied on flashy and mana-intensive abilities. Without careful mana management, they couldn't afford to be careless in the battles ahead, and this made him feel worried for them. But if that's what they think about him, then he had no other choice. As Ishua walks away from the battlefield, he suddenly hears someone calling his name. He turns around and is surprised to see the Saintess, Aria, running toward him. For a brief moment, he catches a sweet scent in the air, a reminder of her presence, but he quickly pushes the thought away, focusing on the situation at hand. Aria reaches him and asks why he left the party so suddenly, looking concerned. Ishua pauses for a moment before explaining that he didn't leave on his own. In fact, he was banished by the others through a unanimous vote. This news shocks Aria, as she realizes that the party had depended on his mana to keep going. Seeing her surprise, Ishua calmly adds that it all happened because of Alan, making it clear that the decision wasn't his own, and that it was Alan's influence that led to his banishment. Immediately, Aria wondered what was wrong with that spoiled hero, but Ishua quickly reminded her that her ominous aura was unfit for a saint. Despite this, he was glad that Aria recognized his efforts all along. Suddenly, Aria confessed that she had come to bring him back to the party, but she had now made up her mind. She told him that she wanted to stay by his side. Hearing this, Ishua reminded her of how hard she had worked to join the hero's party, but Aria exclaimed that she didn't want to follow a hero who had banished their mentor. She then went on to say that she had seen how he supported her ever since their school days, and admitted that everything she was now was because of him. Finally, she asked him to let her accompany him. After hearing her plea, Ishua agreed and welcomed her to his party. Setting that aside, he couldn't help but wonder how she had found him. Aria then explained that she happened to have one of his hairs and used a tracking spell, but this involved sorcery, so Ishua asked her what she was up to. After a brief exchange, Aria asked him about his next plan, and he replied that they needed to gear up for their journey in the nearby town. But they suddenly heard someone shouting for help. Looking toward the sound, Ishua and Aria see a carriage surrounded by giant wolves. Without wasting any time, Ishua declares that they will help, and Aria is impressed by his quick decision. The person in the carriage seems worried and unsure if they can handle the situation, but Ishua confidently reassures them. He tells the person that he will pour in his mana and take down the wolves, showing his determination to protect them. Area, seeing their teamwork, comments that it feels like they are performing a collaborative chant. Ishua quickly analyzes the situation and realizes that the wolves are B-rank monsters, which are tough and dangerous enemies, especially for novice adventurers. He knows that it will be a hard fight, but he also trusts his partner, Area, who is a renowned genius Stank. To his surprise, Area is already casting magic. Ishua watches in awe as she works, recognizing her magic as top tier. He is amazed at how effortlessly she cancels her chants and layers the spells with enchanting, showing just how skilled and powerful she truly is. Seeing that she was overdoing it, he stepped in to adjust the magic's quality. He carefully poured mana with clashing attributes into the circle to stabilize it. After completing the spell, he threw it into the fray. After ensuring it would hold back the power, he signaled, and she responded by casting her dual incantation spell, Innocent Shine. Immediately, the spell emitted a brilliant cross-shaped light that shocked both Ishua and the wolves. The light then enveloped the wolves, and even nearby undead were caught in its radiant blast. With that, a massive explosion followed and covered the surrounding area. Afterward, Area eagerly asked Ishua what he thought of her new magic, but he replied that she had gone overboard, noting how she had wiped out every impurity in the area and transformed it into a holy sanctuary. While she was still apologetic, the merchant they had saved began to be curious about who they were. Later, at the tavern, Ishua thanked the merchant for guiding them to the village, but the merchant insisted that he should be the one expressing gratitude for being brought there safely. Moreover, he was still in awe of the powerful magic he had witnessed, especially since he had never heard of such a feat being achieved through mana transfer. In response, Area explained that it would normally be impossible, but making the impossible possible was exactly what Ishua excelled at. She then added that she couldn't have activated such a colossal spell on her own without Ishua's boundless mana reserves. Ishua's ability to quickly understand high-tier spells, adjust their strength, and make them as effective as possible was truly impressive. To Area, it felt like he was almost superhuman, someone who could do things that seemed impossible to others. But before she could say anything more, the merchant suddenly raised his voice, scolding the waitress for serving his savior, Ishua, unrefined heian nuts. The waitress, looking embarrassed, quickly apologized and explained that the village had been struggling with a shortage of mana. Because of this, they couldn't afford to refine products like they used to. Noticing Ishua's confused look, the merchant decided to explain further. He told him that Axis, the village they were in, was small and facing hard times. The lack of resources meant they could no longer keep the refining machines running or maintain their farming tools, which made things even harder for everyone. In the past, the village was renowned for its refined high-end nuts processed with specialized machines, but as maintenance became unaffordable, production plummeted. With that, the village's future began to look grim. Hearing this, Ishua and Area exchanged determined glances and declared it was their time to help. If it's a shortage of mana, but the merchant protested that he could no longer trouble them. Still, Area reassured him and noted that Ishua was just an overly kind soul. Later, they visited the village factory, where the equipment was in a dreadful state. The merchant then commented on how it had managed to fool everyone for years, but Ishua stepped forward and examined the machines confidently. He thought that he might be able to fix them. With that, Ishua began pouring mana into the equipment and fully recharging it to everyone's astonishment. Channeling mana into non-human objects was actually as natural as breathing for Ishua, since this is a skill he had mastered as the hero party's go-to expert for maintaining enchanted items. While at it, he also used opposing mana attributes to clash and eliminate the grime and rust on the machines. The result was astonishing, and the equipment looked brand new. Even the power source, which had been deemed irreparable, was fully restored, and the rust was gone. In response, Ishua explained that he had adjusted the mana flow and repaired the damaged magic circles, ensuring they would last for a while. However, he still apologized for what he called amateurish handling. But the villagers were skeptical, since channeling mana alone into such extensive equipment and restoring degraded magic formulas was work typically reserved for teams of top-tier engineers. As they continue talking, the merchant grows curious about Ishua and asks who he really is. Ishua smiles and introduces himself as just a simple mina porter, someone who carries goods for a living, but the merchant doesn't seem convinced. He looks at Area, wondering if she is a renowned sorcerer since he has seen her powerful magic firsthand. Area, not at all shy about her abilities, introduces herself and proudly explains that she is officially recognized by the church as a saint. Ishua, overhearing her words, can't help but notice how confidently she embraces her role. The merchant is taken aback when he hears this and with wide eyes realizes that Arya is the saintess. His thoughts quickly shift to Ishua, and he begins to believe that if Ishua is traveling with the saintess, then he must be the legendary hero everyone has heard about. At that moment, the merchant immediately apologizes, bowing his head respectfully and addressing them as the saintess and the hero. He goes on to say that the two of them make a perfect pair, realizing just how important they must be. Hearing this, Ishua quickly urged Arya to deny the misunderstanding. But instead, she was clearly pleased that he said they lived well together, and this only made Ishua urge her to return to her saintly demeanor. Despite his protests, the villagers began expressing their gratitude and proposing a feast in his honor. Ishua tried to explain that they were mistaken, but the merchant casually accepted Ishua's words. However, Ishua felt frustrated and asked him to stop pretending to understand everything. Following that, one villager exclaimed that she had encountered many imposters claiming to be heroes, but Ishua truly seemed like the real deal, which made Ishua realize that the villagers weren't listening. Suddenly, Arya also agreed and declared that he was her hero, which left him confused. However, he suddenly felt something hit him that shouldn't have, but she only responded that she was the one who was hitting. Hearing this, he noticed something off about Arya's behavior. Following that, he caught sight of her chugging alcohol. Alarmed, he pleaded with the merchant not to let her drink because she couldn't handle it, but the merchant continued to call Ishua a hero and encouraged him to relax. Suddenly, Arya leaned toward Ishua with the intent of kissing him, so Ishua tried to stop her, but the villagers just kept passing drinks to him. Meanwhile, the true hero is currently in front of a dungeon. However, the sorcerer knight named Mattia questioned his decision to proceed tackling an A-ranked dungeon without issue. The Grand Sage Little also echoed her concerns and pointed out that Arya was also missing. Hearing this, Alan became furious that despite his efforts to rid himself of Issue, the others were still preoccupied with him. With that, he declared that they don't need Issue, who is a useless fool, and urged them to just follow him without question. Hearing this, the girls just looked at each other and proceeded to follow him. Thus began the tale of Alan, who is a lone hero spiraling into darkness, and Issue, who is the humble Mana porter and destined to be hailed as a true hero in Axis Village. The people bid farewell to Ishua and treated him as their hero despite his repeated insistence that he wasn't one. However, Arya found it endearing and remarked that to the people of Axis, he was the hero who saved their village. With their departure imminent, she asked Ishua where they planned to head next. Then he replied that he intended to return the Hero Party license and start anew as a brand new adventurer. With this decision, their next destination was the budding city of Noish. Meanwhile, Alan fought off monsters in the dungeon and easily manifested his sword according to his desires. The ease of the battles then led him to doubt whether the dungeon was truly A rank and thought that it was manageable even without a Mana porter or a Saintess. To clarify, dungeons across the globe are ranked by the Adventurers Guild from E to S. E-rank dungeons are suited for novice adventurers, while A-rank dungeons can annihilate even the most seasoned teams. Mattia then successfully stopped the monster, but she warned that the creatures were appearing in unrelenting waves. Realizing this, Little and Alan joined her in fending off the attacker. After defeating them, Alan declared with pride that their party was overwhelmingly strong and had nothing to fear, but a new disturbance arose. Alan noticed something amiss and asked Mattia about the cursed sword she wielded. She then admitted that without issue, she couldn't maintain its use for much longer. Little also added that her own mana reserves were nearly depleted. Even so, Alan insisted that they were the hero's party and had to prevail. So he summoned his holy sword, but he suddenly doubled over in pain, which caught the others' attention. With that, he explained that his headache felt like his head was caught in a vice. Hearing this, Mattia immediately identified that the cause was because he was low on mana. Moreover, he was running on mana fumes, but he had never felt anything like this before. In reality, he possessed more mana than most, and mana shortage was never an issue as long as he used regular skills. But the hero's skill, Holy Sword, consumed vast amounts. So to prevent issues like this, the king had assigned Ishua to his team from the start. Suddenly, Mattia asked if Alan could still stand, but his attention shifted to the appearance of a powerful A-rank monster, which is the Lizard Man. Moments earlier, they had been dispatching foes effortlessly, but now this creature no longer regarded them as a threat. With that, Alan fled in panic. He also ordered Little to act as his shield, but Little pointed out that Mattia was still engaged in battle. However, Alan dismissed her concerns and insisted that the survival of a mere spell blade was insignificant compared to that of the hero, who was the party's top priority. Stunned by his words, Little stepped away from him. When Alan demanded an explanation, she firmly declared that she couldn't abandon her comrades who fought alongside her. To her, Alan no longer had the right to claim the title of hero, so despite being completely drained of magic power, Little prepared herself to act immediately. She used a smash blow. However, Alan was in disbelief at the sight of a sage using physical attacks. Following that, Mattia took her turn and swiftly sliced off the lizardman's head and limbs. With the immediate threat neutralized, she turned to check on Little, who confidently declared she could fight without mana, and credited Ishu's advice for her resilience. However, their focus was abruptly interrupted by Alan's shout. Turning to him, they noticed a lizardman closing in to attack, so Medea acted quickly and stopped the lizardman in time. After defeating the enemies, Medea emphasized to Alan that they never abandoned their comrades, unlike him. She also added that they never give up until the very end and vowed that they would all make it home. Eventually, they returned in one piece, but they were completely exhausted. Hence, Mattia reflected that it had been ages since she fought using only swordsmanship, and admitted that she had been slacking off due to over-reliance on her magic sword, to which Little reassured her that at least half of their team were skilled swordsmen. Hearing this, Alan questioned them and asked what they were grinning about when they had to retreat because they could not conquer the dungeon. He was also puzzled at how a sage would use a staff for physical attacks and a magic swordsman would fight with just a dagger. With that, he asserted that he had defeated most of the enemies along the way. Aside from that, he also implied their failure was their fault, and this stunned the others. So Mattia retorted that he was the first to run out of mana, but Alan dismissed it as a case of bad timing due to a headache. Unimpressed, Mattia challenged him to wield the holy sword again, but Little stated that it was pointless to argue with him. Mattia reluctantly agreed, though their disdainful expressions left Alan perplexed. Moving on, Mattia suggested they rest at a nearby village before nightfall, but Alan was still fuming over their judgmental looks. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a woman who welcomed them to Axis, known for its famous donuts. Alan then introduced himself as the valiant hero and explained they were struggling with a dungeon quest, so they were seeking an inn to rest. Hearing this, the woman commented that he was yet another hero, which left Alan confused. She then spoke fondly of Ishu, describing him as humble and mentioning how adorable Arya was. Alan suddenly realizes that Ishua has been in the village and even become a hero to the people. However, a woman nearby reprimands him, saying he shouldn't speak badly about their village hero. But Alan's still upset, insists that Ishua is a deceitful swindler who was kicked out for being incompetent. This claim shocks both Mattia and Little, who can't believe what Alan is saying. Mattia then questions Alan, asking if Ishua left voluntarily, clearly not believing his story. But Alan ignores her, acting arrogantly. He orders the villagers to take him to the best inn and demands that they give him all their potions and mana supplies, showing no concern for anything other than his own comfort and needs. The woman then asked if he had money, but Alan dismissively accused them of extortion. He then declared that providing supplies to heroes was a civic duty, which shocked the villagers and caused Mattia to question him. Mattia then hurriedly tried to explain that such privileges applied only in extraordinary circumstances, but Little noticed the situation spiraling out of control. While surrounding Alan's party, the woman accused them of being imposters and labeled them as frauds attempting to scam the village. However, Alan insisted that Ishua was the real imposter. Yet the woman declared that Ishua hadn't even accepted a reward and was nothing like Alan. As Alan tried to argue further, an egg was hurled at him. Following this, the villagers continued throwing things at them, calling them imposters and reprimanding them for insulting Ishu. Seeing the escalating chaos, Mattia informed Alan that there was no stopping it, while Little added that he was merely reaping what he had sown. In response, Alan could only shout threats at the villagers as he retreated in frustration. As they made their way out, Mattia questioned Alan about Ishu's supposed banishment, asking if he had lied to them. But Alan defensively replied that he had simply ousted an inept fool unworthy of a hero's party. Mattia then called his reasoning unbelievable, and Little pointed out how unjust it was to banish Ishua after all he had done for them. Determined, Mattia volunteered to beg Ishu's forgiveness, reasoning that it was clear they couldn't conquer a Class A dungeon without him. Alan refuses to listen to Mattia and accuses her of holding the team back, only to start giving him orders now. Angrily, he asks if they all want to be banished like Issue. When the group remains silent, Alan begins to wonder if he's made a big mistake. Suddenly, Mattia speaks up, saying she has no regrets about leaving a party that didn't have Ishua in it. Little quickly adds that Alan isn't fit to be a hero because following him would only lead to trouble and disaster. Alan, realizing how serious the situation is, starts to panic. He understands that if he loses the entire team now, it could mean disaster for their mission. In his desperation, he reminds them of the favor he did by allowing them to join the heroes' party. He urges them to do whatever it takes to gather mana potions and prepare to try conquering the A-rank dungeon once again, hoping they will follow his lead. Instead of complying, the others threw their party licenses at him. Shocked, Alan reminded them that these were the licenses of the illustrious heroes' party, but Mattia coldly replied that she was giving hers back. Still clinging to his authority, Alan insisted it was the wrong time since she had no leads on new members, so he then proclaimed himself the hero of the continent. However, they dismissed his claims with indifference and casually wished him good luck as they walked away, leaving him behind. Later on their way, Mattia asked Little about their next plan, and Little suggested regrouping with Ishua immediately since he had never abandoned them. She also revealed that she had randomly acquired detection skills and happened to have a strand of Ishua's hair, but Mattia also admitted that she had also acquired a detection skill and coincidentally had a strand of Ishua's hair as well. Embarrassed by this, Mattia quickly called it sheer chance, to which Little replied that it was serendipity. Using their discovery skill, they determined their destination was the vibrant city of Noish Town. Meanwhile, Alan stewed in irritation and repeatedly reminded himself that he was the hero. Yet he couldn't help but wonder how things had gone so wrong. Suddenly, he consoled himself with the thought that Ishua might also be struggling to find a new team or facing rejection, and he imagined Ishua's eventual tears of joy when they reconciled. With renewed resolve, Alan used his unique hero skill, Party Discovery, to locate the holders of party licenses. To his shock, he discovered Ishua's location was in the rookie town of Noish. At the same time, Arya turned to Ishua and excitedly announced that they had finally arrived. Before them lay the bustling, vibrant city of Noish Town. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, Arya stands in front of a crystal ball and begins to touch it gently. As she does, the receptionist starts to read her stats out loud. Most of her stats are ranked B, C, and S, and the receptionist quickly confirms that Arya is indeed the legendary saint from the heroes' party. Her intelligence and magic power are so high that they exceed the charts. After hearing this, Arya turns to Ishua and tells him it's his turn to register. Both Arya and Ishua had recently given up their hero party credentials and are now registering as fresh adventurers at the Noish Adventurers Guild. The crystal before them is used to measure an adventurer's status and rank their attributes from D to S, with F being the level of an average person's job, and anything ranked A or higher marking someone exceptional. When Ishua places his hand on the crystal, it begins to glow brightly. The intense light surprises everyone around, and they start to doubt his claim that he is just a simple mana porter. The receptionist then examined his stats and was shocked to see most of them ranked A or B, but what astonished her more was his magic power, which was a triple S. Hearing this, the people whispered in disbelief since no one had ever heard of a triple S rank before. Doubting the crystal's accuracy, the receptionist suggested testing him with another device, but Arya declared that it was correct. She then explained that she had witnessed Ishua's unparalleled abilities firsthand when their magic was about to run out. With Arya's endorsement, the adventurers began to chatter excitedly about Ishua's potential, and they speculated that a mana porter with triple S-tier magical power might possess virtually unlimited magic and abilities. After confirming the results, the receptionist humbly granted both Arya and Ishua an initial adventurer rank of C, which she requested politely. Hearing this, the guild members were stunned since achieving a C rank right from the beginning was unheard of. However, Ishua quickly reminded the receptionist that they shouldn't receive any special treatment. Despite his modesty, they were immediately swarmed by other adventurers eager to recruit them into their parties. While Ishua was still perplexed, he noticed that Arya, who was shy by nature, was struggling to maintain her saintly composure. In an attempt to calm the situation, Ishua declared that he was just a mere mana porter and was worthless compared to someone like Arya. But someone interrupted them. A girl suddenly appeared and told the adventurers that Ishua would likely be annoyed if they all rushed in at once. One of the adventurers then referred to her as sister, which only confused Ishua. But the girl promptly smacked the adventurer for being rude. She then clarified that she was Diana and that she was a sword saint. Noticing Ishu's bewilderment, another adventurer explained that Diana was an S-rank adventurer. She was also a member of the illustrious hero Lillian's party, who was renowned as the one who vanquished the Demon King's elite general, Ipa. Putting that aside, Diana apologizes for her group barging in on Ishu, and she also invites him to join their party. Ishua realizes that this is turning into a sort of unexpected competition for his attention. Despite this, he politely declines and explains that for now, he and Arya plan to work together as a duo. Diana then mentions that her leader, Lillian, has the credentials of a hero, which catches Ishu's attention. Before he can say anything, Arya steps in and explains that Ishua has already been through a lot with a hero who didn't understand him. Hearing this, Diana quickly reassures Arya that Lillian is nothing like that. She tries to ease Arya's concerns, assuring her that Lillian is a completely different kind of leader. But Arya wasn't convinced that they could trust a leader who did not bother to meet in person. Visibly flustered, Diana explained that circumstances were preventing Lillian's presence. Seeing Diana's embarrassment, Ishua clarified that Arya's concerns were rooted in her care for him. But he also admitted that Diana seemed trustworthy and, by extension, Lillian must be remarkable if Diana held her in high regard. Still, he expressed his desire to stay with familiar faces for now since he is freshly cast out. Diana then accepted his decision and apologized for springing the offer on him so suddenly. Still, she couldn't help but get dramatic. She then began to lament that she had failed to fulfill her grand mission of recruiting for Lillian, which made Ishua feel a twinge of guilt. Even so, he could sense the strength and sincerity in Diana's demeanor, which reaffirmed his belief that she was a genuinely honest person. Had the timing been different, Ishua might have gladly accepted Diana's offer, especially since Lillian seemed like an incredible hero. Afterward, Diana returned to Lillian to report her failure. However, she noticed Lillian deeply immersed in magic training, where her skills grew so refined that even Diana, who has no magical expertise, could sense its complexity. After some time, Lillian finally concluded her training. Responding to Diana, she dismissed the situation by saying that it couldn't be helped if Ishua had his own plans. Hearing this, Diana couldn't help but reflect on Lillian's unwavering discipline and innate heroism. Born with destiny in her veins, Lillian's fame had soared after cornering one of the 4 heavenly kings. Yet despite her achievements, she remained humble, and Diana had always admired her tireless dedication. But she also knew that the duty of a hero had stolen away Lillian's youthful days and dulled her emotions, or so she thought. Unexpectedly, Lillian starts crying. Diana is shocked as she listens to Lillian tearfully ask if Ishua despises her. This sudden outburst leaves Diana confused, not understanding why Lillian is so affected by this. Trying to make sense of it all, Diana explains that all Ishua and Arya had suggested was that Lillian meet them in person, something Diana has been encouraging her to do for a long time. But Lillian, still upset, says she couldn't do something so embarrassing. Diana, trying to understand more, asks Lillian where she first met her first love. Lillian, with a sad tone, admits that just knowing they're in the same city has left her a nervous wreck. Understanding her feelings, Diana suggested they stealthily follow Ishua and Arya on their quest, then step in to save the day when needed. Hearing this, Lillian quickly praised the idea. Seeing her quickly agree, Diana couldn't help but marvel at how much Lillian had blossomed into a young woman of her age. Hence, love truly seemed to be in the air, and Diana secretly hoped this would lead to a wonderful encounter with Lillian. The next day, at the Adventurers Guild, Ishua began to encourage Arya since their grand adventure began today. However, they were met with chaos as adventurers argued and fought over job postings. Seeing the commotion, Ishua remarked that it was a madhouse inside. But Arya's attention was soon drawn to a table in the corner, and she asked what the postings were. Noticing their interest, the receptionist asked them if they were ready to dive into action, to which Ishua confirmed. But she suddenly realized what those requests over there were. Still, Ishua proceeded to read the tasks. Vanquishing a horde of undead, repairing an immobile power core filter, and searching for Karina's missing cat on 3rd Street. Hearing the last one, Arya couldn't help but make excited noises, which prompted Ishua to comment that cats are good too. With that, Ishua confidently declares that they will take on all the tasks in the area. The receptionist, surprised, asks if they're sure about this. Ishua calmly replies that these are exactly the kinds of tasks they enjoy doing. The receptionist is taken aback, unable to hide her surprise at seeing them take on these no-one jobs so seriously. Ishua and Arya, Both looking confused, listen as she explains that these quests are usually ignored because the effort and difficulty don't seem to match the rewards. She's shocked that anyone would be willing to take them on. Issue, understanding the hesitation, guesses that the lack of interest probably comes from how simple something like finding a lost cat might seem to others. Ignoring this, he later used his power to summon all the cats in the area, and Area watched in awe while asking him how he managed to pull off such a feat. Ishua then explained that cats are drawn to a specific wavelength, so this job is ideal for mana porters. But Area noted he was the only one who could manage it. Before long, they successfully located the cat from the request. Meanwhile, Diana and Lillian silently observed, and Lillian asked Diana how long she thought it would take them to find the cat. Diana replied that this task didn't rely on magical or sword skills, so it could take anywhere from a day to a lifetime. But Lillian constantly retorted that it should only take 30 minutes. Later, as they tackled another quest, Area unleashed her spell, Holy Night Judgment, on the undead horde. Seeing this, Ishua commented that she overdid it, but Area was simply thrilled to be casting spells alongside him. Watching from afar, Diana and Lillian were in disbelief that Area had obliterated 100 undead in one strike, since it typically required a mountain of expensive mana to defeat. Diana then marveled at the sheer power of the spell and wondered if Ishua had truly supplied that much mana himself. Meanwhile, Lillian declared that they would definitely lend a hand next time. But before they could step in, Ishua and Area had already completed filtering all 30 reactors and even asked if it was alright to claim their reward. Lillian then felt devastated, but Diana noticed something. Suddenly, a group of men began scolding Ishua for taking the filtering job. The reactor staff quickly warned Ishua that the men were from a rival company known for intimidating maintenance crews and stopping them from finishing their work. The group then decided to attack Ishua and Area. Seeing this, Lillian excitedly declared that it was finally their time to act, but Ishua calmly told the staff to step back as he began to think of a plan. Since their enemies were human and they were surrounded by power reactors, using Area's large-scale magic wasn't an option. Instead, Ishua decided to set up a barrier to protect them. Seeing the barrier, one of the thugs questioned Ishua's actions, but he soon clutched his head in pain. Ishua then explained that he had created a mana ring field where he unleashed high-density mana that boosted mana regeneration. But those unaccustomed to it, especially those not in magic-related jobs, would experience severe headaches and nausea. Despite the effects, one thug managed to confront Ishu. Seeing him still standing, Ishua deduced that this man was no ordinary thug, but likely a washed-up adventurer hired for coin. So he sought a way to neutralize him without inflicting harm and decided to cast Mana Overflow. As the spell struck, the man began vomiting violently. Diana then asked what had happened, so Lillian explained that Ishua had pumped the man full of mana and triggered an intense form of magic intoxication. Hence, the man was rendered unconscious almost instantly. Stunned by this, Diana realized that Ishua had amplified the surrounding mana to launch an attack, which is a technique originally intended for healing. This confirmed to her that Ishu's triple S-tier magical prowess was no exaggeration. On the other hand, Lillian remained determined that they would be the ones to save the day next time, she declared. However, Diana was unsure. She believed that when it truly mattered, Ishua would not rely on others. Meanwhile, Alan had finally arrived at the busy city of Noish Town. Back at the guild, Ishua greeted everyone cheerfully with a good morning. The other adventurers quickly noticed him and commented on how he kept taking on difficult and thankless tasks, despite his great power. The receptionist pointed out that Ishua had become quite famous in just a few days, but Ishua simply shrugged it off and said he was just doing the jobs that fit him best, not looking for fame or recognition. But a voice called out to him. Turning around, Ishua saw that it was Alan. Alan, feeling full of himself, bragged about banishing Little and Mattia, two really skilled adventurers. He called them weak and said they were stuck in a small town. He then offered Ishua and Area a chance to join his team again. But Ishua and Area just stared at him. Other people started laughing because they knew the real story. The saint had told them how Alan, who was actually blind, had been the one who got kicked out, not the other way around. Alan was so confused and angry, he couldn't believe that everyone knew the truth. Confused, Alan asked if the man realized who he was speaking to, and the adventurer calmly informed Alan that Ishua wasn't an F rank. In fact, he was already a C rank, which left Alan stunned since he knew that newcomers were typically ranked E or F. The adventurers around them eagerly added that Ishua's rapid rise was extraordinary, and that it was thanks to Alan kicking him out that a colossal rookie had descended upon them. Seething with irritation, Alan questioned why he had to endure insults from what he considered pathetic humans. Suddenly, Ishua informed him that he and Aria were doing just fine where they were and had no intention of returning to the hero's party. So if there was nothing else, he planned to take his leave. Hearing this, Alan was left reeling from the rejection and being mocked by the rabble. Refusing to accept it, he drew his sword with the intention to retaliate against the humiliation he felt. But before he could do it, a firm voice commanded him to stop. Everyone then turned to see that it was Diana. Alan then questioned Diana's intervention, but she swiftly replied that no one was allowed to draw their weapon within the sacred walls of the guild. However, if he insisted on a fight, he would have to go through her. With that, she asked him if he had that resolve. Seeing her stern expression, it quickly intimidated Alan. Feeling threatened, he wondered about the overwhelming aura radiating from this dangerous woman. Unsure of what was truly happening, he decided to retreat for now and warned Ishua to be grateful for his mercy as he left. After he left, Diana remarked that he wouldn't even begin to grasp the gap in their abilities without her hostility. But Ishua was thankful to her. In response, Diana assured him that she understood that he doesn't have fond memories of Alan, so she hoped he wouldn't cause any more trouble in the future. With that incident behind them, Ishua and Aria returned to faithfully completing dud requests. About a week later, a new assignment came in. It was a task to travel to an elven village and report any disturbances to the guild, with a reward of 30 gold coins. But it was labeled a dud quest, and seasoned adventurers ignored it. Ishua found the shady client suspicious and sensed more of the story. Concerned about the potential danger, he decided against dragging Aria into such a bizarre quest. However, the guild receptionist noticed his hesitation and asked if he wasn't planning to take the job. She then reassured him that there was no hidden issue with the mission and that he would just need to file a report. Still skeptical, Ishua questioned why anyone in their right mind would take on such an odd task. The receptionist admitted there might be a bit more to it, but after realizing the secret was out, she confessed that this was a special request from the guild specifically for him. She then explained that the guild had proposed offering him a special reward for handling dud assignments, but Ishua remained hesitant since it had only been a week. Knowing this, the receptionist then reminded him about the offer and revealed that they had planned to leave it as a standard dud assignment. With a determined look, she began pleading with him to at least take a look and treat it as a sightseeing trip. Hearing that she would be traveling with Ishua, Aria quickly grew excited at the thought of being alone with him on a relaxing trip. Encouraged by this, she urged him to spread their wings for a change. Ishua then realizes that they have been completely caught up in quests, and that he has been pushing Aria along with him. Feeling guilty, he finally agrees to take a break, which makes both Aria and the receptionist happy. Meanwhile, Lilin asks Diana if she has heard that Ishua is going to the elven village. When she learns this, Lilin excitedly decides that it's time to take action and try to regain Ishua's trust. Diana, however, quietly notices that while Lilin is a hero, her stealth skills are far better than her other abilities. Despite this, Diana decides to push the thought aside and mentions that it doesn't seem like Ishua and Aria will get into trouble. But Lilin doesn't listen, and instead she turns to the receptionist and asks for quests close to the elven village. The receptionist suggests a tough mission: hunting down a mutant ogre king. She explains that this is an A-rank bounty and the most difficult task available in the guild at the moment. Hearing this, Diana acknowledged the challenge while Lilin confidently agreed they could handle it, to which the receptionist shared their optimism. With that, Diana resolved that there was no need to remain lurking in the shadows forever and hoped this mission would bring some progress. 3 days later, Aria and Ishua were on their way and saw the world tree, Yggdrasil, already visible in the distance. Seeing it, Aria remarked how it could be seen from so far away. Ishua then explained that the tree had the power to clean malevolent miasma and had become a legendary entity, safeguarding the elven realm for 2 millennia. Hearing this, Aria recounted the tale where the angels sowed miraculous seeds, and the mighty tree grew, purifying the miasma that spawned monsters. Then the elves gathered at its base, and the surrounding lands became habitable. If the legends were true, it was the world tree that made this land livable for humans. Hearing this, Ishua noted that she was really captivated by that tale, which made her express her eagerness to see the tree up close. However, Ishua felt a strange unease and sensed a disturbance in the tree's mana flow, but he hoped it was just his imagination. Meanwhile, Lilin and Diana found themselves in the midst of battle, which made Lilin express frustration at losing sight of Ishua. In response, Diana pointed out that they had no choice, given the sheer number of monsters at the foot of the world tree. Moreover, she also struggled to breathe due to the miasma's overwhelming thickness. Noticing this, Lilin used a high-level healing skill to purify the miasma, which allowed Diana to breathe properly again. Diana then apologized for it, but Lilin reassured her and explained that it was a simple miasma purification skill. But this prompted Diana to question whether the monster's frenzy was also caused by the miasma and suggested tracking down their bounty target. Before they could make any move, they were suddenly attacked. Diana quickly moved to protect Lilin, and as they looked up, they saw their target, the Ogre King. Diana sarcastically called the Ogre King thoughtful for appearing right in front of them. With that, she launched an attack and declared that the mission was complete. However, despite the strong strike, they just locked eyes, and Diana was easily thrown back. Realizing her attack had no effect, she noted that even the mutated Ogre Kings didn't seem to react at all. Lilin then stepped in and explained that monsters could evolve, and when they surpass their usual strength, it's called ascension. She added that this particular Ogre King must have absorbed a huge amount of miasma, which caused it to ascend to a dangerously high level of power. With no other choice, Diana signaled to Lillian, who quickly understood it as Lillian activated her skill. Diana recognized that Lillian was using her innate hero ability that is granted at birth. Knowing this, she couldn't help but wonder about the immense cost of wielding such a power. Besides, this skill allowed her to expend immense magical power to create a virtual realm, splitting both allies and foes. After Lillian cast a unique barrier, Diana gained an absolute advantage within the realm, and this skill was on a cheat level that was truly worthy of being called a hero's power. After declaring it her untouchable utopia, Lillian described it as a manifestation of her dreams. With that, she urged Diana to fight with everything she had. As Diana's sword began to glow, Lillian exclaimed that her imagination could forge a mythical blade capable of slicing through all creation. Empowered by this, Diana raised the blade against the Ogre King and declared that this power would bring everything to an end. When Diana struck the Ogre King, Lillian initially believed that the battle was over. However, Diana was stunned when the Ogre King remained unfazed by the attack. To her shock, she was thrown back once again, which left them bewildered. They then began to question how their ultimate move, which had even pierced the 4 heavenly kings, had been deflected so effortlessly. Hence, Lillian started to wonder if the Ogre King's magical resistance surpassed her wildest expectations. Despite her doubts, she urged Diana to keep fighting while she still had mana left. Diana then obeyed and launched attack after attack, but each one was deflected. Even so, Diana's determination didn't waver. Suddenly, the Ogre King retaliated and landed a devastating blow on Diana. As a result, she was sent flying, which left Lillian in complete shock. Just then, she noticed the Ogre King moving closer to her. At that moment, she realized she couldn't afford to die here, not before becoming a great hero and defeating the Dark Lord. As the Ogre King raised his weapon to strike her, Lillian's mind unexpectedly shifted to thoughts of Ishu. Suddenly, Ishu's voice echoed, calling out to Arya, urging her not to leave his side. Arya noticed Lillian's realm, which confused Lillian because this was her sacred domain, and no one could enter without her permission. Yet Ishua appeared with Arya beside her. Lillian remembered a time when she was always surrounded by people who called her a prodigy hero and begged to join her party. They were all eager to be part of her group because she had been granted a hero skill effortlessly from birth, and they tried to use that to manipulate her into letting them in. Overwhelmed by their persistence, Lillian hurriedly ran away. While running, she unexpectedly tripped and dropped her bear. With that, she quickly picked it up, but she realized it had gotten dirty, and tears began to swell up in her eyes. Suddenly, someone asked if she was all right. Looking up, she saw it was Ishu, but now what's in front of her is the Ogre King. Seeing him, she thought that she couldn't die yet, knowing that she hadn't done anything for Ishua yet. While she was still confused, Ishua quickly pulled her away from danger. He then began checking to see if she was unharmed, and Lillian thanked him. Seeing her, he suddenly remembered meeting her at the castle before and started to wonder how she knew his name. But he was interrupted when Arya shouted Diana's name upon noticing that she was wounded. Seeing Diana injured, Ishua began questioning why she was there. But Lillian asked her instead how he had managed to enter her sacred realm. Ishua then explained that a few hours earlier, Arya had used her innocent shine ability and expressed her longing to see the world tree up close. However, they didn't expect the elven village to be off-limits, and soon they were told that the world tree was strictly forbidden to outsiders. This left Aria frustrated, and she pointed out that their travel guide had promised them access. Not letting this stop her, she used her skills to take down the undead that were blocking their way. Despite the strange situation, Aria mentioned that she had never heard of anyone being stopped from entering the elven village before. Understanding this, she pressed on, using her abilities to defeat any enemies they came across. But Ishua began to notice something strange. The only enemies they had encountered so far were A-rank monsters, which made it feel like they were deep in the underworld rather than anywhere near the village. When he commented on this, Aria casually asked if there even were A-rank monsters present, to which she replied that she had just obliterated one. Still, he marveled at how much his junior had grown. Suddenly, Aria pointed out that the miasma in the area was getting thicker. Knowing this, Ishua swiftly activated Mana Link Field in their area. Seeing the spell, Aria quickly deduced it was meant to enhance magical recovery. But Ishua added that it also filtered the air within the area. Setting that aside, they discussed why they decided to patrol the area, and that's because the elf village had sealed off since the current concentration of miasma made the environment uninhabitable. Unable to see clearly due to the dense trees, Ishua began to wonder if the world tree was in danger, and what was supposed to be a fictional concern now seemed to be a real crisis. Suddenly, Ishua felt a strange sensation, which Aria immediately noticed. He then called her over and explained the odd feeling. When they reached the spot, Aria examined it and questioned what was happening, which made Ishua ask if she could sense it. Ishua and Aria noticed that the space around them is strangely warped, and Aria guesses it could be the source of the miasma. When Ishua touches it, he is amazed by the complex magic that surrounds them, but he decides to only analyze a small part of it. After doing this, the distortion opens, and Ishua warns Aria not to leave his side. Confused, Aria asks what kind of space this is. Lillian is surprised to hear that Ishua was able to analyze a part of the fantasy world that she herself couldn't fully understand, even though she could use it. She then realizes that Ishua is truly extraordinary. Ishu, thinking about it more, concludes that because the space is tied to Lillian's skill, it has nothing to do with the miasma. Still, the size and power of the magic make him question Lillian's true identity. Just as they are about to move forward, the Ogre King attacks again. Ishua quickly realizes that the ogre is absorbing the miasma, growing stronger. Acting fast, he casts full charge on Lillian to prepare her for the fight. After fully restoring her mana, he then turned to Aria and asked about Diana's condition. Aria was busy healing Diana, who eventually regained consciousness and immediately asked for Lillian, which relieved Aria. But Diana was surprised to see her and Ishu. Suddenly, Aria informed Ishua that she couldn't purify the toxic miasma Diana had inhaled, so Ishua stepped in to clean the miasma and restore Diana's mana as well. Seeing Diana feeling her body lightened, he then explained that the miasma could be neutralized with a blend of curses and mana that cancel each other out. Doubtful, Diana asked if such a method truly existed. Lillian, a powerful magician, was fighting the Ogre King. She was using all her magic, but the ogre was too strong. Ishua was amazed by her power, but he knew they couldn't defeat the ogre. Lillian told Ishua that she would fight the ogre to give them time to escape. She said it was her duty as a hero. Ishua was impressed by her bravery and wondered why some heroes were so much stronger than others. But he was determined to fight, even though it was a difficult battle. As Lillian looked at him in confusion, Ishua had already turned to Aria and instructed her to do the usual. At the same time, Ishua enhanced Diane and Lillian's sharpness, recovery, and protection. Seeing this, Diana was amazed by the potency of the buffs. After that, Ishua urged them to unleash their skills freely and assured them that he would cover all the mana cost. However, he also warned them to be cautious of instant death attacks while Aria maintained recovery spells and additional buffs. Hearing this, Lillian realized they were practically invincible under these conditions, while Diana then wondered if Ishua could sustain such massive mana consumption. In response, Ishua instructed them to charge ahead at full throttle. Taking his advice, Diana targeted the ogre's belly. When her strike left a noticeable scratch, Lillian thanked the buffs for finally allowing their attacks to connect. Suddenly, Aura unleashed her Holy Nova, prompting Diana to marvel at their collective firepower. But despite their efforts, the damage was minimal, and it was evident this would be a battle of endurance. Realizing the upgraded mutants were far stronger than expected, Ishua decided to shift strategy. As he attacked the ogre, Diana and Lillian were shocked to see holy mana being infused into the creature. Ishua then explained that the key to defeating a foe enhanced by miasma was to neutralize the miasma itself. Hearing this, VI recalled Ishua's earlier explanation about blending curses and mana. With that, the miasma within the creature was neutralized. Seeing its enhanced state begin to regress to pre-promotion levels, Ishua declared that he could take his time chipping away at it now. Diana and Lillian wanted to finish the fight quickly. Lillian used her imagination to create a super powerful sword. Ishua was amazed by her power. Diana used the sword to defeat the enemy. She thanked Ishua for his help. Then, Lillian, who felt shy, introduced herself to Ishu. Ishua remembered meeting her at a party, but he didn't know she was a hero back then. Hearing this, Lillian was delighted that he remembered her, but her reaction led Ishua to think she was even shyer than Arya. Shifting their focus, Diana brought up the malevolent fog they had encountered earlier and noted how unusual it was so close to the world tree. With that in mind, the group decided to return to the Elven village and hope for answers, especially now that the hero was with them. However, they were stunned to see the world tree. Its majestic form was withering before their eyes. Seeing the emergency of the situation, Lillian suggested they race to the elf village. Hearing this, Ishua admired her reliability in times of crisis, and this reaffirmed her role as a true hero. Upon arriving at the village entrance, the guard immediately recognized Ishua. In response, Lillian presented her identity card, which proved that she was the true hero and had come to investigate the disturbances around the elf village. Hearing this, the guard expressed doubt and wondered if she was truly the real deal. He then revealed that a man claiming to be a hero had recently visited, and since his arrival, strange events had begun to unfold, so he speculated concerns that this man might be a fraud. Alarmed by this, the group quickly rushed to investigate and left the guard counting on their success. As they ran through the village, Ishua remarked that he never imagined he'd be racing through the elf village like this, to which Arya agreed, since their visit was supposed to be a leisurely exploration. Suddenly, they heard a voice proclaiming that he also had no idea what was going on. Ishua immediately recognized the voice, and upon looking down, they saw Alan. A few days earlier, the king had summoned Alan to report on his glorious battles. However, Alan was unable to deliver, as the party members he deemed incompetent had already left him. At the time, Alan had been staying in Noish, but he returned to the capital after receiving the king's summons. During the audience, the king's attendant praised the kingdom's official heroes and noted their remarkable feats, such as Lillian's vanquishing of one of the demon lord's elites. Turning to Alan, the attendant urged him to share his accomplishments. Nervously, Alan reported that his level had increased slightly, but the attendant pressed further and asked about his plans. Alan then responded that he was currently working on conquering an A-rank dungeon and planned to tackle an S-rank dungeon next. However, the king was weary of such generic reports and declared that he wanted to hear real progress from Ishua instead. The mention of Ishua's name frustrated Alan. He knew that if it became public knowledge that he was the only remaining member of his party, rumors would quickly spread. To avoid suspicion, Alan claimed that Ishua was unwell, which made the king panic, so he assured the king that Arya was by his side and letting Ishua rest. Alan was embarrassed and wanted to do better. He wanted to prove himself to the king. The king gave him a new job and told him to ask Ishua for help. Alan went to the Egg Drail tree, which was a huge tree. He thought there would be strong monsters there, but there weren't. He was confused. Curious, he asked the coachman about the reports of powerful beasts flooding the region. The coachman then confirmed that such reports had indeed been received, which was why the area was currently declared off-limits. Hearing this, Alan began to ridicule Lillian, who was supposed to be a rising star but had gone off on a quest, and was seemingly unaware of the current events. However, the coachman defended her, stating that Lillian was a woman of great nobility and strength, but Alan dismissed her as a mere child. Putting that aside, Alan began plotting to rescue Lillian, who had apparently ventured into the danger zone first, since he believed that if he could resolve it swiftly, all his past failures would be forgotten. Besides, he assumed the rumored monsters were exaggerated and that this task was easy. As Alan reflected, he thought of Ishua and wished he had just returned to his party without making things complicated. Soon, Alan found himself arriving at the elf village without any obstacles. However, the guard noticed that he was another human, so he informed Alan that only those with permission could enter. Hearing this, Alan then assumed that Lillian had already arrived, but the guard demanded his identity instead. Annoyed, Alan declared that he was the hero sent by the king to investigate. But the guard doubted his claim and questioned why a hero would act alone, which only further irritated Alan. At that moment, a woman appeared at the gate. She then introduced herself as Chelsea, the Elf Queen. Seeing her, Alan was taken aback by her beauty. Setting that aside, Chelsea explained that the issue plaguing their land could no longer be concealed, and they needed humanity's help since no clear solution had been found. With that, she ordered the guards to bring Alan inside, but she also warned him not to mess things up, as the problem could spiral into a crisis affecting the entire world. After hearing that it was a big deal, Alan then questioned whether he could handle such a significant task, but he remembered the king's insistence on results, so he gritted his teeth. Hence, he resolved to press on and decided to listen to the details while also planning an escape if things became too overwhelming. As they walked through the village, Alan observed the grim expressions of the elves, which made him reconsider the severity of the situation. Setting that aside, he asked Chelsea where Lillian was, but Chelsea replied that Alan was the only human to have entered the village. Surprised and disappointed by her absence, Alan briefly considered regrouping with Lillian. However, he remembered the king's attendant boasting about Lillian's victory over Ifrit. Seeing an opportunity to prove himself, Alan resolved to handle the situation alone and gain recognition. Eventually, they arrived at the World Tree, Yggdrasil. Alan was awestruck by its colossal size, but quickly noticed something was amiss. He pointed out that the tree's roots seemed to be rotting. Chelsea confirms that Aegel is losing its vitality, and the miasma purification process is failing. This leads to increasingly aggressive monsters, and Alan realizes that if this continues, the entire area could become uninhabitable. Chelsea, clearly concerned, looks to Alan for a solution, but he hesitates, considering retreating with an excuse. He tells her that he's nearly there to investigate, but then he suddenly remembers the king's expectations and the attendant's question about his plan. Looking at Chelsea, Alan loudly declares that they can count on him because he is the hero. After saying this out loud, Alan feels like he has no choice but to commit and assures Chelsea that he will handle it because, as a hero, it's his responsibility. Believing it's just a tree, Alan naively thinks that healing magic might be enough to fix the situation. However, Chelsea and the others began talking about how even Project Edsel had failed to resolve the issue. Stunned by this, Alan realized that even the specialized team of elves could not fix this. Regardless, he thought the regular healing spell wouldn't hurt, so he decided to cast a resurrection spell. After that, he felt a surge of pride in his advanced healing magic that was capable of curing even the greatest of wounds. That's because healing magic was his secret pride that was hidden from others since Arya usually served as their healer. However, he quickly noticed that the tree continued to rot and showed no signs of improvement. Suddenly, Chelsea called him out and pointed out that a basic healing spell wouldn't work on the tree. Alan then hurriedly assured her that he understood and explained this was just the groundwork. He then began to wonder if the problem resembled the status ailment if the tree was tainted by miasma. With this theory in mind, he cast recovery and anti-poison spells. However, the elves started criticizing him behind his back since they had expected a hero to be more impressive, not someone treating the issue as a mere status ailment when miasma was clearly a complex blend of curses and mana. Hearing their murmurs, Alan began to worry about what he would report to the king if he returned empty-handed. Suddenly, he noticed one of the roots swelling like a balloon and its color darkening as if absorbing a massive amount of miasma. Realizing this might be the source of the problem, he drew his sword and declared that the farce ends here. Alarmed, Chelsea asked what he was planning to do, but he just simply told her to sit back and watch. After summoning his holy sword, he attacked the root with determination while Chelsea and the others were stunned by his actions. Alan grinned confidently. Seeing this, Chelsea shouted at him, calling him a fool for losing his mind. Alan, confused, tries to explain that he was removing the source of the miasma, which had been pulling into the roots and causing them to swell. But suddenly, the tree is surrounded by black mist, which shocks him. He notices the miasma quickly spreading through the trunk. Chelsea, seeing the situation, turns pale with fear, knowing that if Aegel falls, it will bring disaster to everyone. She urgently explains that the roots of Aegel are its natural defense, acting as the last barrier to protect the tree from the miasma. Alan freezes in horror, realizing the mistake he's made. The elves waste no time accusing him of being a servant of the demon lord, but Alan quickly denies this. He shouts in frustration, insisting that he had no idea about the tree's defenses and this isn't his fault. But before he can go on, a familiar voice calls his name. Alan turns quickly, Recognizing the voice, seeing Ishu, he asks him what he's doing there. Ishua then asks if Alan has done something to the world tree. One of the elves explains that Alan has cut the roots that were holding the miasma back. Ishu, shocked, asks if Alan had been possessed to act so recklessly. Observing the interaction, Chelsea then asked who they were. In response, Lillian introduced herself and quickly recognized Chelsea as the Queen of the Elves. However, Chelsea dismissed the title because she couldn't even protect Yggdrasil, so she could no longer call herself queen after the elven village was lost. But Lillian replied no and told her that it was far too soon to give in to despair. Meanwhile, Ishua placed his hand on the tree and examined its condition. After a moment, he turned to the group and announced that the world tree was still alive, so he then asked for their permission to heal it, but the elves refused because they trusted the humans once, and it brought greater problems. However, Lillian began telling them that Ishua was just a fledgling adventurer and merely a common mana porter. But she, who is the hero, will vouch for him, and that he will one day become the one who saves the world. Hearing this, Chelsea then looked closely at Ishu's determined expression. Finally, she agreed and trusted in his resolve, which stunned the other elves, so she explained that it's far better to take action than to sit idly and watch Yggdrasil perish. With that, she ordered the others to capture Alan, who quickly called out to Ishua for help and reminded him that he was his leader. But Ishua ignored him and focused on the immense responsibility at hand, placing his hand on the tree again. Ishua felt the mana struggling to flow, and the miasma was heavily tainting the mana, which disrupted its natural rhythm. Knowing this, he realized that if he tried to neutralize the miasma outright, the world tree might perish first, so he needed to restore the function that Alan had severed to contain the miasma. Determined, Ishua began crafting a mana hole as the twisted magic circle appeared. The elves are stunned as they watch the miasma being pulled into the tree. Ishua then explains that this is a twisted magic circle, and it's missing a lot of dark mana. He tells them that when there is a difference in mana density between two types, the denser mana will flow toward the less dense one. This technique was originally made to take mana from monsters. After explaining this, Ishua quickly creates several mana holes. He then tells Lillian to set up a magic circle in the area where the miasma is thickest and asks for help in spots he can't reach. Lillian feels her heart race at being asked to help. Once the circle is finished, she sees how it easily pulls in the miasma. She marvels at the control Ishua has over the mana, thinking, "This is pure wizardry." Suddenly, the magic circles began working in unison and sipping the miasma away. Seeing this, Lillian couldn't believe that there was a method like this and thought that they might actually make this work. Witnessing this, Chelsea turned to Ishua and asked who exactly he was. In response, he simply replied that he is just a mana porter. Setting the matter aside, he urged Lillian to keep pushing forward, but their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a loud shout. Hearing this, Chelsea asked the elf what was happening and declared that there was already a glimmer of hope on the horizon. But the elf stepped forward and explained that a horde of monsters was closing in on the elven village. Aside from monsters going haywire, Chelsea also found out that there was going to be a stampede. Hearing this, Lillian speculated the monsters must be going into overdrive because the world tree's ability to purify miasma has completely shut down. But if they stop the treatment now, Ishua thinks that the world tree will perish. But he and Lillian were already overwhelmed with their efforts to save the tree. Overhearing this, Diana felt glad since she was worried they'd just be sitting around doing nothing. Ishua reassures them that once the world tree revives, the monsters will weaken, so they just need to hold them off until that happens. Diana and Arya understand the urgency and quickly get ready to go outside. Diana asks if the underfloor would be a safe escape route, and the guard confirms that the fence goes all the way down to the ground. With this information, Diana looks at Arya with determination and says their first teamwork mission will be a real challenge. When they step outside, they see monsters peeking out from the forest. Before they can do anything, an elf quickly shoots one down with an arrow. Diana decides to let the elves use their bows for now while she and Arya focus on the path ahead. Arya then casts a powerful Holy Nova, and they prepare to face whatever comes next. It pierced through the advancing monsters. Seeing this, Diana was impressed by Arya's strength. Even without Ishua's support, her title as a saint was not in vain. After a while, an elf soon arrived, carrying all the mana potions he could gather from the village, to which Arya thanked him. After that, Arya quickly uses potions to boost Diana's sharpness and protection before Diana charges into the battle. Arya tells her to be careful because she can't fight without her. Diana then jumps into the fight, cutting through the monsters with perfect precision. At the same time, Arya fights the monsters and casts spells to support Diana. The elf, watching from the side, is amazed by the strength of the hero party but worries if they can keep up with so many enemies. Meanwhile, Ishua works hard to create mana holes around the world tree. The tree is huge, and Ishua wonders how many more mana holes they'll need. Even with all the challenges, Ishua stays hopeful that Diana and Arya can hold out a little longer. But then, Diana is suddenly hit by the horn of a rabbit monster. Noticing her injury, Arya quickly cast a healing spell. Once healed, Diana apologized to Arya, but it was clear they were both beginning to feel the strain. Aside from that, their mana potions were running dangerously low, and the miasma was thickening by the second. The elves also continued fending off the monsters, scaling the walls and growing increasingly anxious about the delayed reinforcements. Nevertheless, Diana resolutely declared that they have to hold on until the world tree recovers. At the same time, Chelsea was informed that the enemy was breaching the walls, so she then inquired about the progress of the evacuation through the back gate. Hearing this, she began to wonder if the monsters would reach the evacuees before they could escape. Even as the miasma was being steadily drawn away, resolving to act, Chelsea commanded her warriors to gather at the gates and prepare their bows, but they refused to leave her side. Meanwhile, Ishua observed that the miasma was finally thinning and mana was beginning to flow freely again. With this, he realized that he just needed a little more time. On the battlefield, Diana was hit once more. Arya tries to prepare a healing spell, but she hesitates as a sharp headache hits her. Diana immediately notices that Arya has run out of mana, so she urges her to retreat. However, Diana is also in pain, and the monsters keep attacking, leaving them no time to rest. As she looks around, she sees several monsters have broken through the fence and even captured some of the elves. Diana grits her teeth, thinking to herself that this has been a tough day. As her sword sinks into the battle, she never imagined she'd face death twice in a single day. Determined to survive, she decides that if they make it out alive, she'll train with Lillian to get stronger. Just then, she hears a voice comment on their situation, saying that this is the kind of moment when Ishua would show up to save the day. Diana is confused by the voice. Suddenly, two figures appeared in the sky. One of them landed directly amid the horde of monsters and immediately drew her magic sword to slash the enemies. After her, the other girl raised her staff and cast Judgment's thunder that obliterated the monsters in its path. After witnessing this, Diana was stunned and wondered where they came from. But Arya recognized them first as Lillian and Mattia a few weeks ago. After Alan's party failed to conquer the A-rank dungeon, Alan told them he would make a name for himself. However, they dismissed his declaration and merely said they looked forward to it before leaving him behind. After that, Mattia urged Lillian to hurry to Noish so she could catch up with Ishua, but on their way, they suddenly heard someone calling for help and saw a carriage surrounded by monsters. Mattia then exclaimed that she wished the roads were safer, to which Lillian agreed as she was eager to reach Noish. Even though they knew Ishua would probably stop to help, they couldn't shake their frustration. After everything that had happened with Elan, they were eager to take out their anger on the monsters. Meanwhile, Lillian struggled to understand what was going on. Inside the carriage, she voiced her frustration about how they were stuck going in the wrong direction, away from Noish. Mattia explained that with the guards gone, they couldn't just leave the situation. They had to make sure the cargo was safe before continuing on their journey. Despite this explanation, Lillian couldn't fully grasp why things had turned out this way. Eventually, they arrived at a mansion where a lavish feast awaited them. Lillian then questioned why they were there, and Mattia replied that the meal was their reward. Soon after, the mansion's owner appeared and expressed his heartfelt gratitude for saving his daughter's life. Unbeknownst to them, the carriage had been carrying medicine for the Lord's ailing daughter. While setting this aside, Lillian reminded Mattia that they needed to leave for Noish. However, the Lord offered them a position as skilled bodyguards, which they promptly declined and explained that they were humble adventurers and not suited for noble service. Undeterred, the Lord pleaded with them to stay for at least one night, saying he could not bear to let his daughter's saviors leave after just a meal. Reluctantly, they finally agreed. To Lillian's dismay, what was meant to be one night stretched into an entire week after being begged for just one more night. Suddenly, Mattia finally woke up and remembered they needed to head to Noish soon. With that being said, Lillian discovered that Ishua had already been there for quite some time and realized that she had let her guard down too much. After some time, they finally left the mansion, though the Lord reminded them they were always welcome to return. At last, they could continue their pursuit of Ishua. However, Lillian soon found herself in yet another baffling situation. That's because they discovered that Ishua was no longer a Noish. Even though it took them long to get moving, the receptionist then explained that Ishua had headed straight to the elf village on a special guild request. Upon hearing this, Mattia was determined to chase after him, but the receptionist stopped her. She informed them that the king had declared the area around the village off-limits after Ishua's departure, so they were worried about him too. Hearing this, Lillian thought it best to comply with the king's order, even though she was reluctant. But Mattia insisted she couldn't just sit idly by. She then asked the receptionist if Ishua had been tackling the so-called dead-end requests, to which the receptionist confirmed. Inspired by Ishua, Mattia decides to carry on his spirit by taking on the same kind of tasks while he's away. With that in mind, the two of them eagerly set out to complete as many quests as they could. They tackle everything from defeating undead to helping lost dogs, delivering packages, and even guiding children across the street. Mattia, excited about the challenge, seeks out more odd requests, and the receptionist can't help but comment on how a new hunter of strange tasks has appeared. But Mattia, full of determination, plans to earn praise from Ishua once he returns. However, Lillian soon finds herself in yet another confusing situation when a giant bird swoops down and grabs them. Mattia, still half asleep, doesn't realize what's going on until Lillian frantically calls out to her. When Mattia finally wakes up, she is stunned by their strange predicament, and Lillian points out that Mattia had been sleeping so soundly she hadn't noticed a thing. She then explained that during their quest to gather Renetsu grass, they had been attacked by the bird. With that being said, Lillian recognized this familiar pattern of being carried off to a nest, so they will likely become food for a creature like Bina. Unwilling to meet such a fate, Mattia began plotting an escape plan if the bird dropped altitude. But Little pointed out that they were heading straight for the elf village. Hearing this, Mattia remembered that it was where Ishua was, but the king had sealed off the village. Little thinks that if the birds are breaking into the area, there's not much they can do about it. Still, Mattia is amazed by the size of the bird and wonders if its nest is on top of the world tree, which leaves Little equally shocked. They both then realize that the world tree looks different and its condition seems strange. Back in the present, Mattia tells the others that this is exactly how she had noticed Aurea and Diana. After that, she focuses on the monsters coming their way and starts dealing with them. Lytle, not wanting to be left out, also helps by fighting off the enemies. Watching their efforts, Aurea noticed how much Mattia and Little had improved, how they had become skilled at battling while effectively conserving mana over the past few weeks. On the other hand, Diana questioned why Alan was causing a fuss when he had such an incredible team. But their discussion was interrupted when Little handed Aurea a mana potion, prompting Aurea to thank her. Seeing this, Diana declared she wouldn't be outdone and charged into battle herself. However, her display of swordsmanship left Mattia astonished, and asked who Diana was because she had incredible skills. Suddenly, someone else arrived to lend a hand, launching a swift and powerful attack on the monsters. As they looked up, Aurea recognized that it was Lillian. Upon hearing Lillian's name, Mattia excitedly asked if she was truly the one who had defeated one of the 4 heavenly kings. Lillian told the others that Ishua was using magic to stop the bad air. Aurea felt better because they were working together. She trusted Ishua to finish the job. Earlier, Lillian and Ishua had worked together to put special holes in the ground to stop the bad air. They noticed that the leaves on the tree were falling slower, which was a good sign. Ishua said that the holes were working and that Lillian should help the others. Now, Ishua was using a lot of magic to clean the air and help the tree. The elves were amazed at how much magic he was using. Equally amazed, Chelsea acknowledged that Ishua's immense magical power surpassed her own. Yet she pointed out an even more remarkable feat, and that is pouring mana recklessly could strain the branches and leaves. But Ishua demonstrated precise control, ensuring the mana flowed seamlessly to every nook and cranny. Knowing this, she couldn't help but admire him as a truly remarkable human. Meanwhile, Ishua felt the mana beginning to circulate through the tree and pressed on a bit further. Suddenly, the elves observed an extraordinary sight. The leaves stopped falling entirely. Not only that, but new leaves also began sprouting, signaling that Edessel's regenerative functions were being restored. With that, the elves watched in awe as the world tree came back to life before their very eyes. Overcome with emotion, Chelsea began to tear up after feeling the breath of life return to Adriel. Meanwhile, Diana and the others continued their fierce battle against the monsters. As they fought, they noticed that the miasma had significantly thinned. Also, the scattered leaves were settling, so the purification of the world tree was clearly underway. Realizing this, they encouraged each other to hold their ground after sensing that the end was near. However, the monsters suddenly stopped moving. Observing this, Lillian announced that their movement had ceased entirely. Seeing them turn away, the group was initially puzzled, but Little explained that the monsters were weakening due to the restoration of Adrail's purification function, prompting them to withdraw. Hearing this, Aria asks if this means they have successfully held their ground, and Diana confirms it. The group cheers and happily declares that they've managed to hold their ground. Meanwhile, Chelsea walks up to Ishua and thanks him from the bottom of her heart. He responds, saying there's still one last thing to do. He starts creating another detailed magic circle and casts it into the tree. As the circle surrounds the tree, Chelsea asks what it's for. Ishua explains that the circle is a special reservoir of light mana. It's meant to help the tree if it ever has trouble with its purification again. Chelsea, feeling deeply moved, realizes how much Ishua has done to help, but they were interrupted when Aria called out to Ishua as she ran to hug him. He asked her if she was hurt. Aside from her, he also expressed his gratitude to Lillian and Diana. However, Ishua was surprised to see Mattia and Little present as well. In response, Mattia ran to hug him and was thrilled to see him after such a long time. But Little pointed out that she might be overdoing it, even though it was partly true. Hearing this, Ishua expressed his disbelief that they had come all this way to help, but Mattia replied that it was all for him. Little quickly confessed that they had only ended up there because of a bird, which made Mattia remind Little that it was supposed to be a secret. Observing this, Chelsea then turned to Ishua and called him a savior who had descended upon the elf. But not only him, she also praised the entire group and noted how incredible they all were. In response, Ishua humbly clarified that their arrival was merely a coincidence, which prompted Chelsea to ask if they had been working together for a long time due to their flawless teamwork. Setting the conversation aside, Chelsea announced that it was time for celebration after they saved the region and promised a festival in their honor. That evening, the elves cheer for their saviors and bring out the best ingredients from the village. Everyone enjoys themselves, celebrating together. Chelsea quietly shares her thoughts with Ishua. She admits that even though Alan hadn't been the one to finish off the tree's danger, she had thought Adrasol, the world tree, would wither away. But now that the tree has come back to life, it feels like a dream. Ishua listens, realizing how heavy the responsibility must have been for Chelsea, as both the queen of the elven village and the guardian of the world tree, which was so close to fading away. Out of nowhere, Chelsea bows to him and promises to help him whenever he needs it. This surprises Ishua, so he quickly thanks her for organizing the festival and reassures her that it is more than enough. Touched by his humility, she realized just how selfless he truly was. However, their conversation was suddenly interrupted when he heard a familiar voice and a wave of nervousness washed over him as he wondered who it could be. As Ishua had predicted, it was Aria, who got drunk again and loudly declared that she wouldn't rest until she completed her fruit wine collection. Seeing this, he realized that he had let his guard down. While the elves cheered for Aria, Ishua reminded her that even though the wine was sweet, it was still packed with alcohol content. However, Aria confidently replied that as a saint, she could purify her intoxication and claimed herself to be invincible, despite already showing clear signs of being tipsy. Suddenly, she had another idea and invited Ishua to drink with her, so he quickly declined. But his attention was soon diverted as Lillian began loudly lamenting why her feelings couldn't reach him, which prompted Diana to ask who had allowed Lillian to drink. Lillian then started calling herself a wimpy hero and declared that she was already hated anyway. But Diana hurriedly tried to calm her down and urged her to leave the booze behind, which made Ishua comment that things were getting out of hand. However, Diana also noticed Ishua still trying to stop Aria. With that, she exchanged a knowing glance with him, and both of them realized they were facing their own challenges. Nevertheless, they continued taking care of both Lillian and Aria. The next day, Ishua prepared to bid farewell to Chelsea. However, they are interrupted when Alan angrily asks what kind of treatment a hero like him is getting after being locked up. One of the elves quickly responds, saying that Alan is not a hero but a devil who tried to destroy their village. Mattia also agrees, saying Alan doesn't deserve such a fancy cage. She even jokes about breaking his legs to stop him from causing more trouble. She then adds that they really need to report Alan to the king. Despite this, Alan keeps trying to escape, which makes him shout angrily at Ishua for saying such things after draining all his mana. After setting the argument aside, Ishua turns to Chelsea and tells her that their group will stop by Noish before heading to the capital. Hearing this, Chelsea expressed her longing for their return, to which Ishua replied that the festival had been a wonderful experience and he looked forward to visiting again someday. With that, he declared that it was time to move on, and together they set off on their journey back to Noish. Back in Noish town, the receptionist was relieved to see that Ishua and his group had returned safely. She then apologized for the chaos that had erupted around the elf village, but Ishua reassured her that everything was fine and asked her to report on the quest immediately. After that, the receptionist was shocked to learn that the cause of the monster's rampage was the malfunctioning world tree. Aside from that, they also defeated a variant S-rank ogre king and even revived the world tree. In awe, she asked Ishua who he really was. In response, he humbly replied that he was just a mana porter, but the girls behind him shook their heads in disagreement. The receptionist then suggested a reward, but Ishua refused and insisted that even the promised 30 gold coins seemed excessive since he did nothing. However, she pointed out that his accomplishments were worthy of a hero, but he was still humble, and this made Arya wonder if Ishua truly believed he hadn't done anything remarkable. Moving on, the receptionist officially marked the mission as accomplished without any complications. She then turned her attention to Lillian and approved her mission as well. Excited, the receptionist expressed her admiration for the prospect of seeing Lillian and Ishua working together again. But their conversation was interrupted by someone outside calling for them. As they stepped out, the receptionist began comparing the group to their so-called hero. At that moment, Alan loudly proclaimed that Ishua and the others were members of his party and that the victory was his. However, the townsfolk ridiculed him for banishing Ishua and planning to wage war against the elves after delivering the final blow to the world tree. Hearing this, Ishua couldn't help but think they should have made Alan wait outside the city. But Mattia was still holding a grudge against Alan for nearly abandoning her, so she allowed him to face some well-deserved humiliation. Deciding it was time to leave, Ishua suggests they go to the capital and report to the king. When they arrive, the king greets them warmly and tells them that he already knows about their actions through Aries sent by Chelsea. However, the king quickly turns his attention to Alan and questions him about the chaos he caused by going off alone. Alan stays silent, and that's when Arya steps in, explaining that Alan had expelled Ishua from the party and that she and the others left after questioning his decisions. The king is shocked to hear this, and Alan tries to call out to Arya, but the king immediately orders him to be quiet and demands confirmation from Ishua. Ishua then explains that Alan had decided he was only useful for his magic support. Outraged, the king declared that Alan's unique holy sword was his only merit, and that the party's success had always relied on Ishua's wisdom and mana reserves. Mattia then added that Alan had lied to them, claiming that Ishua left voluntarily and forced them into an A-rank dungeon raid where he used her as a shield to escape. Realizing Alan's misconduct, the king concluded that he had been acting solo even before being sent to investigate the world tree. Alan was in trouble. The attendant asked him if he lied about his abilities, but Alan wouldn't admit it, so the attendant took away his hero title. Alan was upset and begged Ishua and the others to join him again, but Mattia said no, and Arya said that if Alan was really a hero, he would prove himself without their help. Arya smiled, but there was also a dark, serious side to her.